Hey, Rosanna, once again, I want to thank you for allowing me through your devices, the cameras, the smartphones, the computers, and anything else that is being used in order to view and listen to what I'm saying. I don't want to take much of your time because I know that time is precious and I know that you all may have something that you would like to do on this Sunday afternoon. But I wanted to address some things, but I want to start off by saying that in this life that so many of us take for granted through the creation theory, through the creation theory example of what life is, we have to understand that in this creation, all living organisms are given opposition, right? And the opposition that you endure and that is given to you is only opposition that is supposed to bring out the best in you. It's supposed to bring out the God essence that you have within you. Now, it's obvious that, like in any game, you have to have opposition in order for you to bring out of yourself what needs to be in yourself, right? In that opposition, in order for you to be successful, you have to gain separation. And the only way to gain separation in any type of opposing force that is intended to stop you from being successful, you have to know your opposition. You have to know those that are attempting to oppose you from being the very best or maximizing the potential that is latent within you. Unfortunately, life has become a game. So we use the terminology as game when we talk about life. So when I talk about life and I use the terminology game, understand that I'm only using a term that is known by everybody, so that you can grasp what I'm trying to put over to you. So now we find ourselves with an opponent. When I say that, I'm talking about in specific right now, I'm talking to Black and Hispanic young men. I want to go over some things with you. I made notes because I don't want to misquote anything, and I don't want to give you any information that you cannot research yourself. So I made some notes. I want to start off by talking to you. First of all, giving salutation to my cobras. You know, these cats really support me, really support what I'm doing. I really support them and support what they're doing. So to all my cobras, much love and respect, and know that I got you the same way that you got me, right? That's first and foremost. I want to touch on this thing called Operation Ferdinand. Now, following the 1960 Watch riot, there was a doctor named Dr. Louis Jolyon West. And Dr. Louis Jolyon West was at the UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute, right? And he created a theory. And the theory that he created went like this. He stated that the riots were tied genetically and racially to Black men who were prone to violence. The riots were tied genetically and racially to Black men, and that Black men were prone to violence. So in that vein, he proposed a violence initiative and wanted to use psychosurgery and a chemical castration to address the so-called genetic and racial violence in Blacks and Hispanics. Now, understand that this was an undertaking that seems to you now to be far-fetched. But I'm going to take you back in time so I can bring you up to time so that you can be on time. Now, in 1972, May the 3rd, in a hearing on the House of Representatives 15417 before the Senate Committee on Appropriations, the 92nd Congress, second session, part 5, at 4946, Dr. William Sweet testified in favor of psychosurgery. And the psychosurgery was something that was indigenous to himself, Dr. Vernon Marks, Dr. Frank Irvin, and their Operation Ferdinand at UCLA. Now, Dr. West was a lead figure in the brainwashing work for the Air Force, and he came up under a project called MK Ultra. Now, this was a CIA project called MK Ultra. Now, they called the tactics that they used, they said it was the safe way of using IWs, which was invisible weapons. Why were they using invisible weapons? It was between 1956 and 1969, while he was head of the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology and Behavioral Science, that he gained top secret CIA clearance for the MK Ultra work. Now, between 52 and 56, Dr. West was the Air Force Chief of Psychiatry at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. Now, these tests with chemical and biological weapons conducted on children, comatose patients, pregnant women, and people of low income. These were all people that they felt were expendable. So for 10 years, the CIA, through Dr. Harris Isabel, Director of Research in 1945 to 1963, they conducted these studies on mostly black men who were imprisoned in a federal facility in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, understand that the ideology for Operation Ferdinand was developed by a CIA operative who now was teaching at UCLA in California. And he come up with this idea that violence was genetically and racially attached to black people and Hispanic people, that we were prone to violence. Now, by conducting this study on unwitting participants, the CIA violated the Nuremberg Code for medical ethics because they were sponsoring experiments on people who had no idea that they were being experimented on. And what they were using was biochemical drugs. Now, I say that twice because I want you to really understand what's transpiring before I bring you up to date. Just bear with me for a minute. 1955 to 1956, the CIA, in a program code named Mr. MK Naomi, targeted 2 black housing communities with biological weapons. One of them was the Carter Village in Miami, and the other was the Carter Village in Chatham County, Georgia. Now, what they did in this experiment is they unleashed these mosquitoes that was bred in the Army Chemical Corps at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and these specific mosquitoes carried yellow and dengue fever. 1,080 people in the Miami residence came up sick. They caught the whooping cough, and even some of them died. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want to bring you up to speed on what's transpiring right now before your very eyes that you don't see. Just bear with me again. 1960s civil rights movement was infiltrated by academic psychiatrists, and they called themselves participant observers. They were studying what they termed as psychodynamic factors in the Negro Revolt. Now, this whole thing about the academic psychiatrists infiltrating the CIA, the civil rights movement, was published in the International Journal of Psychiatry. So this is where this whole idea began. In 1972 at UCLA, they began the Center for Prevention of Violence project. Now, this was created to alter what they termed undesirable behavior in black and Hispanic boys. In 72, 2 junior high schools agreed to participate in this program, 1 black and 1 Hispanic. What they were doing was they were using chemicals to manipulate hormones that either make you aggressive or passive. Now, the Hastings Center report of 1979 on pages 1 through 19 on their research of violence, science, politics, and public controversy published this information. This is where the myth of a black super predator began. And you heard Hillary Clinton mention this when they were trying to pass the 3 strikes law. She said that these people that are committing the crimes and gang violence in our communities are super predators, and they need to be brought to heel. We thought that she had came up with this language on her own, but this is language that's been being used since the 1950s in order to quell rebellion or quell dissension amongst black men in America. In 1973, in his State of the State address, California Governor Ronald Reagan announced that he would invest over $1 million in this UCLA experiment. In 1974, Dr. Isidore Zifferstein, in an interview with Samuel Chavkin, explained the hidden agenda of this experiment at UCLA. And this is what he said. He said, and so our prison population is burgeoning with young and vigorous people. There was a rising radicalism in their midst, and there is an uppityness among the blacks and Chicanos. And the prison officials found this intolerable. Now, when they said uppityness, what they meant is there was a pride and a respect and an honor and an integrity being developed in the California prison system. 1974. This is about the time people caught on to our comrades George Jackson's political philosophy and ideology. This is the time when the Black Panther Party had exhausted their means, and most of them were political prisoners. This is the time where people that were trying to come out from under the yoke of oppression and inequality was embracing a black nationalistic ideology and were attempting to not overthrow the government of America, but were attempting to bring themselves up by their bootstraps by doing things for themselves that they had previously depended on the government to do for them. So this designated them in prison as an uppity people, a people who took too much pride in themselves. So they said this was a rising radicalism. Now look at the terminology, because when you hear this terminology, the terminology went from radicalism to terrorism. This is why this walk down history, down this path of history, is so imperative, because I want to bring you up to date on it. Now, Samuel Chavkin wrote a book called Mind Stealers. And in this book, he talked about the political prisoners, or those that were predisposed to violence, and how they were using a drug called a nectine through what they term psychosurgery, hidden under the guise of therapeutic behavior modification. What does all of this mean, and how does this apply to what's transpiring with you today? What it shows you is that you have an opposer to your liberation, whether it be psychological, emotional, spiritual, or even physical. There's someone that opposes that, and they've already attributed to you a predisposition to violence. So this is why it's so easy for people, when they see you in the streets, to clutch their purses when you walk by them, because there's an image that has been projected into the heads of non-Black and non-Hispanic people concerning Black and Hispanic men. This image makes you more vulnerable to police brutality. This image makes you more vulnerable to being shot down in the streets by police officers. And this is not something new. This is not a new ideology. This is not, the experiment has always been to quell any type of rising of a black messiah. J. Edgar Hoover said it himself. He said, we must by any means stop the rise of a black messiah. Why do you want to stop the rise of a black messiah? Because if he is a messiah, then he's not coming to bring violence. He's not coming to bring disruption. He's not coming to bring you havoc. He's merely coming to a people to heal the people and to bring the people into a proper knowledge of themselves, a proper knowledge of civilization, and a proper knowledge of humanity. So why would you want to stop that? Because it goes against the premise upon which your demise has been based. Your demise as black and Hispanic men has been based on the fact that you're prone to violence, you are a danger to society, and you are a savage. And these psychosurgical drugs, this biological manipulation of your physiology has been ordained, and not only ordained, but it has been supported by a government using college facilities. Now, why UCLA? Well, at that moment, there was a burgeoning of nationalistic ideology. We know that the most effective black nationalistic movements were born in California. They spread to other places, but they were born in California. You had the United Slaves Organization in California. You had the Black Panther Party in California. You had a Symbionese Liberation Army in California. You had the Black Liberation Army in California. You had these groups that were set to bring about and procure the justice and equality of black people. So the projects, the experiments were done in California amongst California inmates. That's where it started at. It extended through the United States, and even in Puerto Rico, they were doing these experiments amongst inmates. And they were using drugs to do it. So I don't have to go into the detailed explanation of how the crack cocaine funded the Iran-Contra affair, a war that America said never was transpiring. I don't have to go into that with you because you know that. But what you don't know is this has always been the objective. Now, why am I talking about all this? I'm talking about it because I want to bring you up to date and tell you this. Be careful of these dispensaries that are selling you weed. Because these dispensaries are genetically modifying a natural plant and are selling it to you under the guise of something being legal and as a therapeutic behavioral modification. This is why I'm bringing you up to date on this. Be careful what you ingest. I'm not saying weed is good or bad. That's not my position. My position is that any time a thing is made legal and the thing looks like it went against oppositional forces, it's made legal for a reason, right? And the reason why it's made legal is because there has to be another way to exact this experiment, to exact this desire to paint you in a specific light and to quell any type of uprising as far as psychologically, spiritually, emotionally by black men. So you are public enemy number one. While you're being killed in the street, you're public enemy number one. While you're being targeted for mass incarceration, you're public enemy number one. Why are you being painted as a criminal? You're public enemy number one. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree. A lot of people are going to have an issue with me because I say this up front and out loud. But you know that what I'm saying is real. And they know that what I'm saying is real. And if they don't know, I've given you some information to go do your own research. Go do your research and see how long they've been studying the prowess of black men. Go do your research and see how long that they've been trying to eliminate the unification of black men in America. To the point where they're now trying to pit the Hispanic against the black. in order to stop your unification. Well, what is it that they find so threatening in the unification of black men? I'm going to tell you what it is. Your unification means the demise of a system that is built upon oppressing you. This is the threat. So, with that, I want to say a couple more things to my Cobra comrades and to my Diamond comrades and to the comrades that's involved with Instep or Diamonds in the Rough or any organization that I'm a part of. We don't have the luxury of time to engage frivolous matters that brings us neither success or failure. What I'm saying is, if the matter does not proscribe us from being successful, it means nothing. If the matter does not aid and assist us in being successful, it means nothing. Time is of the essence. And nobody can tell you that more than a cat that just went and served 21. And I can't get any of that back. But what I can do is I can address you in hopes that you don't have to go through what I went through. And for my comrades that's behind the steel curtain, I want you to hear me good. You use that prison experience as a college. Turn your cells into an office. Start doing things that are productive, because productivity defeats confinement, right? Self-development outgrows confinement. So if you continue to keep yourself in a stage of self-development, then you will eventually have to be spit out of that institution. But if you fall into the ideology and philosophy of what a convict is, and you start identifying yourself as a convict psychologically, then your behavior will follow that identification, right? And I'm telling you that you're not a convict, you're not an inmate, you're not an offender, you are a God that happened to do something that is against public opinion. And now you're incarcerated for that. But don't take on these opprobrious labels: convict, criminal, inmate, offender. Don't take on these labels, because there is a vibrational frequency attached to the label that you attribute to yourself. So if I call myself a convict, there's a specific way that I have to act in order to bear that label out. And you're not that. Anytime you attribute a label to yourself, that attribution in and of itself influences, and in some cases dictates the behavior that's attached to it. So if that's true, then saying that you are God will inform, influence, and dictate the characteristics and the behavior that's attached to that ideology. I don't know about you, but I don't want no type of behavior attached to me but the behavior of a God. Because the God is a creator, right? And this is what you need to be today. What they don't want you to do is learn your potential, wherein you can begin to create instead of destroy. Because as long as you're destroying, then you are playing into the ideology and the philosophy, whether the negativity that is attributed to your black skin, to your Hispanic skin. Now, you want to tell me that this is not about race? I agree. But what it is about social, economic, and political reality. The social, economic, and political reality is that there's two ethnicities that are in the spotlight today as Black and Hispanic. There are two ethnicities that are being opposed. The unification is being opposed as Black and Hispanic. And let me say this, we're the main perpetuators of our own demise. I'm not just pointing my finger at nobody outside of us. We're the main perpetuators of our own demise. So it is imperative that you recognize, identify, and transcend the behavioral impediments that stand in your way of being successful. One of those is your thinking process. I just done 21 years, and I'm not a convict. I just done 21 years, and I'm not an inmate. I'm not an offender. Who in the hell did I offend? How do I offend a society by committing a crime, a society that's based upon a crime? Your crime was genocide against the Native American. You established your whole existence on a crime. So how did I offend you? Right? So we have to start defining our own realities. We have to start being who we're supposed to be. And I want to leave you with this. A quote, since most of us in this country are up under the interpretations and up under the teachings of the Bible, I want to leave you with this. Your Bible. Psalms 82, 6 through 7. I have said, God talking, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High God. But ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes of the earth. Now, that's not my quote. That's your Bible. If your Bible is telling you that ye are gods, ye are God. If the Bible tells, if God tells Moses, I have made you a God to Pharaoh. If Jesus, the man you say that came in, that was the personification of God, is a man, then why do you find issue with it? And I tell you that you are God and I'm a God. I want you to think on that. I want you to think on the dispensaries. I want you to think on the marijuana that they're feeding you out of these dispensaries. And like I said, my position is not for or against marijuana. I have no position. But what I'm saying is be careful what you put in this vehicle, what you call your body. It's like putting, if you get something from a dispensary, it's like putting unleaded gas. I mean, it's putting like regular gas in an engine that takes nothing but unleaded. The car will still run, but it's going to have, it's going to jerk a little bit. It's going to misfire a little bit, right? So take care of your vehicles. I'll leave you as I came to you. And I look forward to having a discussion on a personal level with my Cobras and on a personal level with my in-step people, because I can go deeper into this, into the plot, right? And it needs to be researched. Do your research. Thank you for allowing me to address you. I'll see you in a minute.